Hi, my name's Starsky and welcome to From the Studio on Clubbing TV. In this episode, I'm going to take a look at the rebirth or the regeneration of a modern classic. In fact, it's such a classic, I think you could call it a legendary synth. It's the Synclavier Regen. And I've called this legendary because it's part of the story that takes us from analog tape to digital workstations, because it started off in the 70s as an FM synth, and then the Synclavier 2 came out, and that had, they built on sample capability and sequencing capability, and at the time, they'd cost you from $20,000 to $200,000. And when you think back then, that was worth about £112,000 in the UK. The average price of a house was about £55,000 back then. So this was twice the price, or its ancestor was twice the price of an average house. Today in the UK, an average house is £288,000, and I can't imagine paying £500,000 for something like that today. But luckily you don't have to, because this comes in at a snip at just over £2,000. This became a staple of pro studios, and the list of who used it is a who's who of massive pop stars back in the 80s, possibly the most famous of which was Michael Jackson, and this was used for the intro to Beat It. But the list is huge. Sting was really famous for saying, I think, that he couldn't live without his, Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, and basically I've got a list down here of all the 80s pop stars that used it, and it's basically everyone. So yeah, it's a definite legend. So let's take a look at what we get here. It's a really nice looking unit, this. It's quite lightweight, but apparently it's packed with top of the range audio converters, giving studio quality sound. And on the back, we've got loads of USB connections, so you connect it to sequencers, synths, your DAW, or even plug a PC keyboard into it. And I really like that this is definitely its own unique design. I love these little halo lights that you get on the buttons. I've not seen anything else, anything like that. I like the different lights that you get on this. Different colours indicate it's in different modes and doing different things. So this is soloing a track, for example, in yellow, so it's soloing those three. This is that intro track, so you've got 10 parts playing. If we go into part 3 and into the partials, in each of these, you can have up to 12 partials, which you think of those a little bit like different oscillators, but slightly more complex than just an oscillator. The oscillator's there, and then there's loads of other bits, so it does get quite complex, but it leads you through it. Let's go into track 10, because I know what's happening on that. Part 1. If we go into the filter section, like I say, we've only got this one input slider, so everything that you input with this. Slide up and down, or you can tap it to go much slower, or we can hold and move it. So there's lots of ways of navigating your way around this one slider. But if we go to the filter, for example, we go to the different parameters. We can see as we flick through them, the lights change because we're moving through the different modes. In the note effects here, do the same in timbre. So this is the level of the whole tone. You can see as we flick through those pages. But let's go back to the filter on this. Filter envelope. So there's the decay time, for example. If we go into that tone itself, press this, then we can solo just one of the sounds. Go back into filter, envelope. Let's take that attack time off. Go back into the decay. So it's not too hard to navigate, actually. I know a lot of people would prefer a knob per function, but there's so many functions on this, that's almost impossible. But you can access loads of it via MIDI. So I'll show later on how I can modulate like the different levels of the tracks and the cutoff using these knobs here. I'll do that when I go through the track. But I've not mentioned anything yet about the partials and the timbres and all the things it can do. So let's take a quick look at that now. Here we've got a timbre that's made up of 7 different sounds. And they're actually all bass sounds, similar sounding bass sounds, all made using different methods on this. So we start off on number 1. We're getting a sort of square bass. I don't know if you can see this. It sort of looks like a square oscillator. If we go into the wave here, we can see it's additive, and we've got the harmonic content shown on that graph. And then I'm filtering it with the onboard filter. So if I change the decay time, for example, so that's using the additive synthesis engine with an analog style filter. And then if I go to sound 2, this is using just the additive engine. So it's the same original wave, but it's being modulated by another wave, by a sine wave, and that's being modulated in here through this parameter. So if I wanted to change the speed of that, FM envelope decay. That's doing a similar thing to sound 1 called partial 1. 3's empty, I don't know what I did there, but 4. If we go into the wave again, and then we look at this, we're using a sample. I'm using a sample from my Moog Prodigy. Square sample, and again, this sounds like it's being filtered by this. It is decay time. So that's a sample being filtered by the Synclavier. And then the next one is a subtractive sound, which is the Regen acting like a virtual analog synth. And on this, we can do things like, let's add some more voices. A bit of unison detune, nice, big and fat. Open that filter a bit maybe. Go into the cutoff. Change the decay time. So nice big fat analog tones as well. And then the next one. This is a Mini Moog, just the sample of the Mini Moog. So you can hear that's nice and slow down there. If I play it higher, it's a lot faster. And that's because we're just playing a simple sample. And then the final one, I'm using that same sample, but we're chopping it up into frames. Don't know if you can see this on the camera, but basically takes the sample, chops it up into different time slices and plays through them. So we should theoretically keep the same speed. And you can modulate back and forth through them. So they're the main ways of making a sound, but as we'll see later, you're not just stuck with a single sample per partial. You can do what you do on a sampler, and you can spread them all over the keyboard, you can layer them, you can mix and match them, do all sorts of things. So much more powerful than it may first appear. In that very 80s sounding intro track, I think I've got 10 parts playing here. We can flick through them and see the different names, or press the session view and we've got all the different tracks there. And this is all being controlled by the Arturia Keylab Essential 49 Mark III. And I'm using this basically like a little mixing desk. These are the track levels, and I'm using these for the filters for some of the tracks. So So yeah, full mix, 10 tracks, all playing from the Regen. So we've got the drums, and inside here we've got hundreds of samples. So it's working like a sampler. If we go into here, we can see all the different samples I've got loaded in. How many is that? 50? And the reverb you're hearing is from the Regen. If I go into the effects, turn the reverb off. So I've got really nice, cool sounding reverb there. And on track 2, got the same kit, but this time I've added some dirt, some grunge. Going to the effects on this one, I've got some bit crushing going on and some grunge. So some digital madness. And I think it's on track 9, I've got some other 80s drums. On track 3, we've actually got 12 partials in that one tone. Now if we solo each of these, and if we go into the effects on that, if we go into the filter, hopefully you can see that moving as I turn the knob here. So loads of visual feedback from this display. So there you go with the Synclavier Regen. It's not going to be your first synth. It's not something that you just pick up and start playing with. You do have to spend a bit of time with it. But once you do, once you uncover all its mysteries, you can sit there for hours making really nice complex soundscapes or nice glassy pads or nice 80s sounding stuff. So I did think it was worth showing because it is part of the story that got us from where we were to where we are using DAWs. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, please remember you can catch it whenever you like on our Clubbing TV official YouTube channel called From the Studio. And if you've got any questions, drop me in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. And also, if you are into this sort of stuff, do take a look at my Starsky Car YouTube channel as well. And I'll see you in the next episode of From the Studio.